What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing a pros and cons video of living in Fort Lauderdale 2023 update. Let's get into it. All right, so it's been about a year, almost exactly a year since I did my last pros and cons video. I'm gonna go ahead and link that in this video so you can take a look at it. That's gonna be more of your generalized pros and cons. In this video, I wanted to kind of dive a little bit deeper, maybe go a little bit more narrow on some things that I've realized over the last year. So with that being said, let's get into it with the first pro, and that's gonna be Fort Lauderdale is an active lifestyle. So I have spoken about this in some other videos before, but I thought it's worth mentioning as a pro of living down here. Especially if you're coming from somewhere with a cold climate, you're gonna love it down here just based off the fact that you can be outdoors and pretty much do everything. If you saw my last video where I talked about how moving to Fort Lauderdale changed my life, I talk about how moving down here, I adapted to that active, healthy lifestyle, and it actually caused me to lose probably about 60 pounds or so. There's just something about wanting to be outside all the time, whether it's to soak in the vitamin D or just get the sun in general. I mean, it's expected when the weather is an average of 78 degrees year round and the sun is out a majority of the time. It's just expected that you're gonna wanna be outside all the time, walking a lot, exercising. They have some outdoor gyms out here, which is really cool. So just wanted to touch on that for number one, Fort Lauderdale active lifestyle. Moving on to number two, sticking with the outdoors, it's that there is actually natural beauty around here. So a lot of people think of Florida as beaches and then maybe city, at least South Florida. But one thing that I didn't even realize when I moved down here is that there's a lot of natural beauty down here. There's a lot of nature. And I'm not even just talking about the Everglades, which, the center of Fort Lauderdale is only about 30 minutes from the Everglades. But in addition to that, there's tons of parks within the metro area that just make you really feel like you're out in nature. One of my favorite ones is gonna be Hugh Birch State Park. It's right in between the intercoastal and the ocean. But when you're there, it doesn't feel like you're in Florida. It feels like you're in the middle of the woods. Another popular one is out in Davie, whether it's Treetops Park or the Pine Island Ridge. Pine Island Ridge is actually the highest elevation in Broward County at a whopping 29 feet. But like I said, when you're there, you kind of just don't feel like you're in Florida. And then in Coconut Creek, we have Trailwinds Park, which has horse stables. It also has the world's largest butterfly exhibit. So if you're moving somewhere, maybe from the Pacific Northwest, where there's a lot of woods, or Colorado, or just even New Jersey, where there's nature and hills and mountains, you kind of do get to experience that a little bit down here in Florida, minus the hills and the mountains. But as far as nature goes, there is definitely plenty of it in this area. Pro number three, it's still relatively affordable. Now I know what you're thinking. All you hear on the news is how prices are skyrocketing in Florida and everybody's moving down here. And while yes, that is the truth, home prices have gone through the roof here in the last 4 or so years. The cost of living is actually still relatively low, especially to where a lot of you guys reach out to me from, or where I've helped a lot of you move from. The cost of living is still relatively low here. So I'm gonna put up this graphic on the screen. And if you take a look, these are the most frequent places that you guys are from that actually reach out to me or actually wind up moving here. And if you take a look at the cost of living, it's considerably lower down here than in some of those areas. Now, some of you do reach out to me from the Midwest and some smaller towns and smaller areas where the cost of living down here is considerably higher than where you're coming from, but that's far and few in between. So when you really put it into perspective, yes, home prices have gone up here a lot. Yes, the cost of living has gone up, but take a look at where you're moving from and then compare it. And like I said, a lot of you guys that I've helped or a lot of you that reach out to me, you're coming from these places that I put up on the screen, and you can see the cost of living is still relatively affordable. And speaking of reaching out to me, I just want to remind you that I am a realtor here in Florida and I love making these videos, but I love more to help you with your real estate needs. So my number and email are on the screen. If there's anything I can do to help you, I'd love the opportunity to earn your real estate business. Getting back into it. Pro number 4. You don't have to live in the city to experience the city. And so one of the cool things about the Fort Lauderdale metro area is it's really not a big metro area. Pretty much everything is within a 45-minute, maybe an hour radius, depending on traffic, whether that's getting into the city or getting to the beach. And so I'm gonna pop this graphic up on the screen and let's zoom into Florida, and you can see this shaded green area. That's the entire Miami metro area. So that's including West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, and Miami. Now, if you look at that rectangle right in the middle, that's Broward County. So you can see how much it shrinks just for the Fort Lauderdale metro area. Then really only a third of that is actually livable, and the rest of it is Everglades. So zooming back out, you can see how small of an area that really is. Now let's take a look at some of these other metro areas on the map. Houston, for example. I know for a fact that Houston, the radius for the metro area can be like 2 hours, and you can be out in no man's land out in Houston. Dallas, Fort Worth, the New York metro area, which takes up like 2 or 3 states. Los Angeles, Phoenix metro area is massive. So when you really think about living in these areas and being close to the city, a lot of these areas, they're within a 2-hour radius, whereas down here, like I said, 45 minutes max. And for the most part, that's really if you're out near the Everglades or all the way up northwest near Parkland. For the most part, you're probably only about 30 minutes away from the city or the beaches. Pro number 5, Fort Lauderdale has a bright future. So I may have spoken about this one on the last pros and cons video, but I think it's worth noting again, in case you haven't seen it, that there is massive plans in place for Fort Lauderdale in the next 10 years or until about 2030. And Fort Lauderdale is still an up and coming city. So it's not that same retirement, touristy, or spring break area like it has been. I mean, with the housing market in Miami, Fort Lauderdale's quickly become one of the most popular places to live in South Florida. And so I'm gonna leave some info about this in the description, but as you can see here, they have big plans. The skyline's gonna look completely different. They're planning 13,000 new residential units, 600,000 square feet of shopping and dining, over 1 million square feet of office space, and 1,000 new hotel rooms just by 2030. And like I had mentioned, Fort Lauderdale at one point was really popular for only retirees. And just in the last 10 years alone, we've seen 43% increase in people between the ages of 25 and 45. So a lot of people are moving here of all age groups. It's quickly become like one of the hip places to be, I guess you could say, with a really great arts and culture scene. It's just kind of like a step back from Miami. So a lot of people that think maybe Miami is too much, they settle for Fort Lauderdale. All right, so moving along to the cons. Con number 1, yes, Fort Lauderdale has a bright future, but with that means never-ending construction. And I don't necessarily just mean construction downtown where, you know, they're putting up new apartment buildings and office buildings, or road work where they're constantly trying to fix the roads, or the tunnel, for example, on Las Olas that's been under construction for 2 years. But I'm even talking about construction within the neighborhoods. It always seems to be that there's just a lot of work going on, whether it's people renovating homes or fixing the sewer lines in the streets or empty lots where they're building new homes on. It seems like you can drive into almost any neighborhood and there's just some type of construction going on. So just coupling that all together with the construction downtown and on the roads, it can get pretty messy when it comes to driving and traffic. So, I mean, you got to pay the price. If we're going to have a city here that really does have a bright future, I guess you got to put up with the construction, right? And in addition to construction is going to bring up con number 2, which is going to be the sewage issues. So Fort Lauderdale actually really does have very old infrastructure. The underground sewage system is about 106 years old. And especially over the last couple years, you know, there's been a lot of cracked pipes under there, and there was a major sewage spill, and I believe it was the beginning of 2020 where it leaked like 100+ million gallons of sewage into the roads, into people's yards, into the waterways, and it wasn't pretty. But it's very old, and it's something they've been working on. I mean, very frequently you'll see boil water advisories because of sewage leaks down here or sewage line breaks. But from the research I've done, I was able to see that the city recently did invest about $65 million into fixing this problem, but it has been an issue. I'm sure it was an issue, before I even moved down here. I remember in the last 3 years, Bayview Drive, which is, it's a road that runs kind of along the intercoastal on the east side of Fort Lauderdale. They had major problems there, and sections of Bayview were completely closed off for 3 years straight while they were replacing the underground piping system. But again, this is something that needs to be done, especially when you have really old infrastructure like this. In addition to that, the poor drainage system is cause for a lot of flooding here. And I'm not talking about flooding like what we saw at the beginning of this year with the 1 in 100 year storm. But it could only take 15 minutes of rain to see the streets flood, people's yards flood. I'm not saying your house is gonna flood, but it doesn't take much rain here in Fort Lauderdale to see any type of flood. And that was a problem when it came to the flooding from the sewage line back in early 2020. That was definitely a problem. So we can only hope that they continue to make progress on this, but that is definitely a con of living here, especially if you're buying a house and it's in one of these areas. So make sure that's something that your realtor is checking on for you. Let's stick on the topic of water. Con number 3, the water is horrible down here. The drinking water, it tastes bad. A lot of Floridians are gonna argue with me on this one. I don't know if it's because that's all they know, but coming from the Northeast where we had Poland Spring water, I can say I was honestly spoiled because the water down here just has this weird earthy sulfur taste to it. And I've looked at it online and it says that it's due to the minerals and that it's not harmful, and it's just, it does not taste good. And I remember the first time I tried it, I was at the gym drinking out of the water fountain, which was probably a mistake in the first place. And I said to my friend, I was like, is this water how it tastes down here? Or is this just should I just not be drinking out of this fountain? And he was like, no, that's how it tastes down here. And then one time when my family was visiting, they were staying at a hotel on Fort Lauderdale Beach, and there was this sign in the bathroom. I'm gonna pop it up on the screen because I don't remember exactly what it says, but you're probably seeing it right now. And when you get down here, you're gonna see Zephyr Hills water. That's Florida's water. Trust me, just don't drink it, it's not good. And I know a lot of Floridians are gonna argue with me on this. I've gone back and forth with some of the people who are born and raised here and they don't see a problem with the water. I guess it's all about perspective, but for all my people from the Northeast, New York and New Jersey, they do sell Poland Spring down here at BJ's. Yes, it's probably gonna be a little bit more expensive, but it may be worth it. Either that or just make sure to get a good filter for your tap water. Even a Brita will do. But I thought that one was kind of funny. It's just something I thought about. The water here is nasty. Next con, insurance nightmares. And not only homeowners insurance, but car insurance. So Florida has the highest car insurance premiums in the country and is one of the hardest states to insure a home in. Yes, it has something to do with being on the coast and being close to water and having the potential threat of a hurricane. But as of lately, we have been seeing a lot of insurance fraud, especially with homeowners insurance, which has just been causing a lot of carriers to drop out of Florida. So they're either not renewing new policies or they're jacking the price up like crazy. And then as far as car insurance goes, it's just, again, it's due to the amount of claims. You've heard me speak about the drivers down here before. There's a lot of accidents down here. And there's just a lot of fraud in insurance down here. Now, that doesn't mean that you're gonna experience fraud, but it's just a reason of why the premiums are so expensive. It's just one of the reasons. And I just recently actually saw an article that said rates jumped about 30% heading into hurricane season for auto insurance. So it actually just went up a little bit more. Now, I've actually spoken to some of you that came from New Jersey and other places, and you told me that your car insurance didn't really increase in price. So that's a good thing. So maybe it doesn't affect everybody the same way, but it's just something to know that insurance is a nightmare down here, more so when it comes to homeowners insurance than auto, but auto is still pretty pricey. Next con is gonna be the lack of police presence on the streets. And I don't mean that there's no cops down here patrolling, but there is definitely no cops down here pulling people over, driving. And, you know, at first that might seem like a cool thing, like, hey, I could speed a little bit and not get a ticket. And yeah, that may be pretty cool, but that's probably also could be a reason as to why there's so many accidents out here, because a majority of the accidents out here, they're not caused by weather. They're caused by reckless drivers who know they can run a red light or a stop sign or do 120 on 95 and get away with it.
Hey, pedestrians outside!
Again, it's Florida. These people don't matter.
What?
One city that I do see with a police presence on the streets that actually does checkpoints is Pompano Beach. Even though they do not have their own police department, they are run by the Broward County Sheriffs. They will frequently have checkpoints in the mornings and on the afternoons where they pull people over, not necessarily for speeding. Well, I can't say that from experience. I've been pulled over by them for my window tint a couple times, but they at least have some type of presence. But don't get it wrong, there are cops out here. You do see cops out here. I'm not saying that the police just go out into hiding. It's just maybe if there was a little bit more of a traffic presence, it could mitigate some of the other issues we have with the reckless driving and then eventually the high insurance premiums. And if I didn't scare you away with those cons, my number and email are on the screen. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time, or you can go to the link in my description and book a Zoom call directly with me. I'd love to help you in any way that I can. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll catch you on the next one.